Hey guys, welcome to our Facebook Live of today. We are joined here by our immigration attorney, Narciso Cruz. How are you doing, Narciso?
Pretty good, Alan. I'm just hanging out with my buddy Bacon. He's the law office mascot. You can see him there as our logo. But Alan, what are we going to do today?
Today we're going to touch upon some brief comments or brief questions that people have been asking due to the USCIS change in procedure because of this the COVID-19 pandemic that we're going through right now. And we're also going to touch upon the executive order by Donald Trump. We're going to go ahead and explain what an executive order is and what it did to the immigration process. We'll be back after this short intro, and then we'll go ahead and get in touch with you guys on these comments. So Narciso, what are the services that USCIS is providing right now? I know there's a lot of things going on with the pandemic. People are trying to figure out whether or not the offices are open, if they can go in, or if they can talk on the phone, figure out if they can submit their applications, or things like that. Can you kind of elaborate on what it is that they can do right now during this pandemic?
So as you know, right now, USCIS is currently closed. It seems like the entire world has been placed on a pause, and we're being told to stay at home, social distancing. That's exactly what's going on. So USCIS has unfortunately closed its doors. They're no longer conducting biometric appointments, which is a fancy word for fingerprints, and they are no longer doing interviews for either adjustment of status, which is a green card process, when you do it inside the U.S., whether it's marriage-based or whether it's some other type of family-based relationship. They're not doing those interviews, and they are not doing swearing-in ceremonies, the oath for citizenship ceremonies. They are closed, and they don't have any in-person appointments as of today. The recording of this video, April 2020, the announcement is that they are getting ready to open come June 1st, 2020. So that is what we are hearing currently.
Interesting. And what about the applications that are going right now? So there's people that have applied already for their immigration process, and people that are still trying to apply. So what do you say to the people that are wondering, well, you know, the offices are closed, but is my application still in process and it's still going on? Or is it going to be stagnant, and then are we going to work after that?
So this is what's going on. Immigration is still working, even though they are not seeing people in person, one-on-one. They are still working behind their doors, very much like us. We are still seeing people, but on a very protective type basis. Our law office is still open. Immigration has decided to keep working, keep processing these applications. So people who have their applications in, immigration officers are working on those applications. They're trying to adjudicate them. They're trying to get these benefits toward those people. And so us as attorneys we're still working on clients' applications, because even though it seems like the world completely stopped, it hasn't really. It's just no contact in person. Coronavirus is serious. We're doing social distancing, and because of the rapid spread of coronavirus, USCIS has closed its offices for in-person appointments, meetings, interviews, biometrics, but they're still working behind closed doors.
Very interesting, Narciso. So moving forward, what's going to happen with the I-765 renewals? Can you touch a little bit on that and kind of elaborate as to what is the procedure going on right now?
So as everyone already knows, an I-765 is the application for employment. Everyone needs a work permit. Everyone needs to work. Some people are told not to work, but mostly, as you already know, the immigrant population for the most part are the type of people that work and are considered essential workers. They're either people who are working inside a kitchen, or people who are doing construction work, or they might be even farmers or farm hands, and providing the food you and I eat, and that the food that America needs and eats and is fueled on. People who are in the cleaning, janitors business, and things of that sort. So yes, People who need work permits can still submit their work permit renewal or applications. What immigration has said is that they will go ahead and recycle the old biometrics, fingerprints of the old I-765, and people will get their work permits. Just to give you an example, I recently had a DACA client, DACA Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals, people who came here at a very young age. I had a client come in and he wanted to renew his work permit under DACA. I told him that the coronavirus is going on, but I told my client that we could still submit his work permit. The biometrics fingerprints that were once captured, they will be recycled. This is the fastest I've ever had a work permit been given to a client. It took about 1 month for my client to get his work permit. Why? Because immigration just recycled the old biometrics and gave him a work permit. And now he has a renewed work permit for another 2 years under DACA.
So another question, Mr. Cruz, has to do with the extensions of RFEs and NOIDs. Can you kind of elaborate on that, explain to the public what that actually means, and let them know what the procedure is on that also?
So people use these acronyms, and immigration lawyers throw out these words, acronyms. They're like RFB and OIDs. What are these things? RFB stands for Request for Evidence, and NOID are Notice of Intent to Deny. None of these things are good things. When you get them, they're a massive headache for both the attorney and the client. Our office does everything possible to try to load up and make our applications as best as possible so they will not get rejected. So under these circumstances, what I could say here is that, yes, people are still getting these RFEs. They're still getting these NOIDs, but what immigration has announced is that they will give people a grace period to answer these RFEs and NOIDs. They will give people a 60-day extension. So, for example, if you have a further request for evidence, that letter you get from immigration usually says, hey, I need more evidence for you to prove that you meet the qualifications and for you to get this immigration benefit. We need this and this and this. It'll give you the details as to the evidence you need to further supply to immigration to get your application approved. And it also comes with something very important, and that's a due date. Do not miss that due date. But under the current circumstances, immigration has said that they will be flexible and will have a 60-day extension. So let's say your RFE is due on a certain date during coronavirus, they will give you a 60-day extension. But my advice is always talk to your attorney before relying on whether or not you really do have that 60-day extension or you do not. You do not want to make an assumption with this one, because immigration, unfortunately, will deny your case if you assume you have a 60-day extension when you do not. So it's very important for you to pay attention to your document, that due date, and also talk to an attorney.
Very informative, attorney. So another topic that I'd like to touch upon is the public charge adjudications by the USCIS. You know, people may lose their job and they might see some benefits or medical treatment. Is that something that they should worry about if they were to lose their jobs during this pandemic and they did try to seek help?
So, Alan, one of the things I like to do is explain things, and sometimes I get accused of over-explaining things, but still, it's something I have to do. It's something I think I like doing, especially for our clientele. Our clientele could be looking at us for the first time and not really knowing exactly, you know, who we are or what is a public charge. So, public charge normally has to do with an inadmissibility issue. Alan. Normally when someone applies to get a green card inside the US, they have to be admissible, meaning that they have to meet certain requirements for them to be allowed to get that green card. Other inadmissibility issues are like criminal convictions, things of that sort. Public charge is one of those. What the old law used to say is all you need is an affidavit of support and also evidence that the person hasn't taken any benefits from immigration related to welfare, cash welfare, or prolonged medical treatment of some sort. The new law did away with that affidavit of support and issued a lot more guidelines. And it issued an 8-factor test where the affidavit of support is no longer the determining factor. It's one of 8 determining factors. And if anyone has more questions on this issue, we do offer consultations. We're immigration attorneys. This is what we do. And you could call us and you could talk to us. But going back to your question, Alan, let's go back to the question. What's going on with public charge during coronavirus? Everyone is staying at home. The government did say, stay at home. We're going to send help. There are people who are a little bit upset because they ask, where is that help? Alan, what we're seeing right now is long bread lines, people in their cars at food banks, and sometimes they wait for hours and hours. And once it's their turn, the food bank tells them, we ran out of food. Families are starving. People aren't able to work. We're quarantined. So what immigration did is they decided to put a pause on public charge. They said that they will not be enforcing public charge. But this is really what it means. It means this. Let's say you are currently receiving unemployment benefits. First of all, unemployment benefits is an earned benefit. So that does not, it's not considered public charge. In other words, you pay into the system. You pay through the deductions you get at the end of your payroll or your paycheck. And so immigration will not consider that as a negative for you. The stimulus check you may have or may have not received is not considered public charge either. If you get government benefits during the time of your unemployment because you were forced to be unemployed, immigration will go ahead and consider the totality of the current circumstances, coronavirus. My advice is if you happen to take public benefits like food stamps or aid or anything of that sort, you could also have the evidence where the governor of your state, let's say our state, California, announced that people should quarantine all over California, and it was mandated by the governor. If you live in a specific city where quarantine was eventually lifted, you can have that evidence too, to show that during this period of time you were not employed, you weren't working because you were quarantined. Here's the evidence as to what was happening in your specific state. And that's how you could potentially navigate through this thing called public charge during the corona pandemic. But I also want to throw a caveat here because unfortunately, immigration hasn't fully adjudicated a case where they're looking at someone's ability to get a green card with the new guidelines for public charge. What I mean by this is that immigration just recently changed the public charge analysis. And so they're barely going to implement this. And now we have a pandemic. We're still in the pandemic. And so they do announce things, but how they're going to work out in reality is another thing. Stay tuned. We'll probably be back with another video where we're going to inform our audience as to how this really works.
Very good. And as you and I know, current USCIS offices are closed for the public. Are there any other modes of communication where people can go ahead and get in contact with people that are working there? I don't know, via mail or telephone or any other way that they can get in contact with people that are working at the USCIS offices?
So USCIS is closed, but what they are doing is they're giving people an in-person appointment for a limited basis only, and these are normally emergencies. What qualifies as an emergency? You might want to have to talk to an attorney to see whether or not a specific situation in I guess your current dilemma is an emergency. I've had clients who unfortunately had to go through surgery and they needed an advance parole document, a document to travel outside. That in the past has been considered an emergency. But the way you contact immigration is through either the internet, through an e-request. As you know, Alan, they recently got rid of something called an InfoPass, which was a good service. It wasn't a great service, but still a good service, good enough for an attorney or someone who was applying for an immigration benefit to talk to an officer face to face. But there is a phone number as well. It's 1-800-375-5283, where someone could go ahead and call USCIS and navigate through their systems to try to get someone on the other line. I will admit, and I will say that it's very hard to contact USCIS ever since the Trump administration took its presidency. Unfortunately, what we're seeing is that immigration is not very communicative at the present moment. They are not very transparent, and so the channels of communication have almost closed during this presidency.
Right, and speaking of the presidency, as you know, President Trump, tends to tweet a lot about some information that's been going on throughout the country. And one of his recent tweets, and I quote, "In light of the attack from the invisible enemy, as well as the need to protect the jobs of our great American citizens, I will be signing an executive order to temporarily suspend immigration into the United States." If you can kind of elaborate as to what an executive order really is, and what does he mean about temporarily suspending immigration into the United States?
So, Alan, what you're reading is a tweet from a man who tweeted public policy. After everyone went home, all his policy advisors went home, all the lawyers went home, he decided to get on Twitter and tweeted this tweet. And it started a frenzy. Our office got a bunch of calls. People worried, what does he mean? He's going to suspend immigration. I have family who's trying to immigrate into the US. He created a massive chaos. Well, what I want to say is that the executive order has already been published. And what is an executive order? An executive order is pretty much an order or a new law that the president has the power to make and enforce. Obviously, there's certain limitations. During this pandemic, he does have the right to actually issue certain guidelines or issue certain rules that we must abide by. Alan, if I could be honest with you, what happened during the drafting or the issuance of this tweet or this idea to suspend all immigration to help the American worker was the fact that we were getting a bunch of criticism towards and against the President of the United States for his ineffective handling of the coronavirus pandemic. As you know, currently the United States is the world epicenter of coronavirus. Unfortunately, we are at the tape of this video, and it might go and get higher and higher, but we are at more than 50,000 people have perished. And so that's something very terrible and something sad. And so there was a lot of criticism. What did the president do? He tried to point the finger to someone else. He decided to cut funding to the WHO, World Health Organization, blamed them for not warning of this pandemic earlier. And what else did he do? He tried to shift the focus to another group of people, and that group of people happen to be immigrants. And so this is just a distraction. So what did this executive order do? What was the outcome? Well, it suspended immigration for 60 days for people who are outside of the US and who are not married to US citizens. And so pretty much it got rid of the visa bulletin. As people may or may not know, immigration is a preferred category system, meaning that certain categories or family-based relationships, immigration assigns a certain preference as to how many visas are going to be available. What the president did is said, we're going to put that on pause for 60 days. But Alan, let me be truthful and honest with you, this is a joke. Why? Because the U.S. consulate in other countries are currently closed, and they might continue to be closed for the next 60 days. So in reality, this was just nothing. It didn't do anything. If I could probably phrase this executive order, I'd probably phrase it with 2 words: womp womp. Really, it didn't create anything. It was just a political stunt. That's all it was. So what do I tell my clients about this executive order? Don't worry about it. It's probably not going to make a huge impact. It might delay a case for maybe about 20 days, but that's probably the most I'll see a case be delayed because of what President Trump recently did.
Great. Thank you very much, guys. At the end of the video, I'll go ahead and leave the number down. It's 619-717-2233. I'll leave Narciso here. He's going to go ahead and let you guys know how he can invite you to our social media so you can get more answers to your questions.
Well, as usual, everyone, if you like this Facebook Live, give us a thumbs up. And if you feel that someone could benefit from any of the information we shared today, go ahead and share this video with them, because I think knowledge is power. We also have a YouTube channel where you could subscribe and hit the little notification buttons to know when we have new content, and for you guys to see more Bacon, that dog that was here at the very beginning of this one video. All right, everyone. Thank you. That's it for today. Y'all have a good day.
Thank you.